This happened many years ago, back when I was still in high school. And even now, when I think about it, my stomach tightens. I've never liked camping, not even a little. The dirt, the bugs, the nights so cold and quiet. You can hear your own heartbeat echo inside your ears. Sleeping bags that turn into slabs of concrete by morning. It always felt wrong to me, like the woods were watching. But my dad, he was the wilderness type. One of those men who believed the forest could fix you. Every summer, he dragged me deep into the trees, with his rugged friends, all of them laughing, drinking, and pretending the darkness around them wasn't alive. By sophomore year, I was done suffering in silence. I begged him to let me bring a friend, someone who could make the whole thing less miserable, less lonely. To my surprise, he agreed. Just like that, no questions, no hesitation. So I brought Charles. Quiet, smart, always curious Charles. And I didn't know it then, but bringing him along changed everything. Because what happened that night should never have happened to us. Now, you'd think bringing Charles would have made things worse. I mean, he was a hardcore Boy Scout back then, the kind of guy who actually loved camping. But Charles was cool. He teased me for hating the outdoors. Sure, but he wasn't one of those real men love the woods types. He never made it a big deal. And honestly, I figured if I had to suffer, I might as well suffer with someone who knew how to light a fire and pitch a tent without turning the whole trip into a disaster. He was excited to come, partly because he loved nature, but mostly because back then, he grabbed any excuse he could to get away from his strict parents. If only we knew how bad that decision would turn out to be. Unfortunately, the trip didn't go as planned. Not even from the start. One of my dad's friends had messed up the campsite booking. So instead of some quiet spot, way out in the mountains, we ended up at this cheap, overdeveloped campsite. Indoor bathrooms, paved walkways, a tiny playground for little kids. It wasn't camping. It was glorified backyard living. Glamping, if you want to call it that. My dad was furious, and that's putting it lightly. But the real problem, the part none of us saw coming, didn't show itself until a few hours later. Right next to the campsite, separated only by a rusted chain link fence, was a budget amusement park. The kind that feels empty, even when it's open. I'm not joking. An actual amusement park. Carnival games, a rusted Ferris wheel, and a couple of sad-looking roller coasters. Felt surreal. Like two completely different worlds had crashed into each other by mistake. An amusement park right beside a campsite. Those places were never meant to exist side by side. Everyone was pissed. My dad and his friend kept muttering about how this wasn't real camping. Even Charles wouldn't stop talking about it. And we had driven hours to get there, so there was no turning back. No easy escape. So we just dealt with it. made the best of a bad situation. And Charles, of course, stepped up right away. Within minutes, our tent was up. Every knot tied perfectly. Rain fly tight. Stakes hammered in clean and straight. The whole setup looked like something taken straight out of a survival manual. If only everything else had stayed that simple. Charles and I were sharing a tent. And once everything was set up and dinner was finally over, we slipped away for a bit, pretending we needed to organize our stuff. The truth was, Charles had smuggled in some weed inside an old Altoids tin. Back then, we were in that phase of life where breaking rules felt like breathing, where wandering into places we didn't belong was our favorite kind of thrill. We sneaked into a darker patch of woods, far enough that no one could see us, and we smoked, quietly laughing to ourselves the whole time. A couple of hours passed like that, talking about school, life, all the dumb things we thought we understood. And eventually, we realized both of us had way too much energy to even pretend to sleep. That's when Charles looked at me with that grin, that mischievous, reckless grin. I should have known better than to trust. He leaned in and whispered his idea. We should go explore the amusement park. I was skeptical at first, until I realized how simple it would be. The park was closed, the lights barely on, and the thought of climbing a roller coaster in the dead of night sent a strange thrill through me. After we were sure everyone was asleep, well past midnight, we grabbed our flashlights and made our way to the fence. It wasn't difficult at all. One quick boost from Charles, and suddenly we were inside. The park was nearly pitch black. Rides loomed like dark giants against the night sky. Every shadow seemed alive. We knew there were guards, their presence a soft, constant hum. From the golf carts patrolling the grounds, felt like we had stepped into a stealth video game, moving slowly, staying low, holding our breath, praying not to be seen. But something about real life is always more terrifying than any game. We moved through the park slowly, ducking behind ticket booths, eyes glued to the patrol. At one point, we had to sprint across an open stretch of road just to avoid a guard. The thrill raced through me, but so did the fear. Finally, we reached the base of the wooden roller coaster. Up close, it was massive, a skeleton of timber, scraping the black sky. We spotted the maintenance stairs and didn't hesitate. The metal rungs clanged softly under our feet as we climbed, trying desperately not to make a sound. Some parts had no railings, and my stomach twisted. With every step, we finally reached the top, and the view was unreal. The entire park lay below us, silent, shadowy, like it was holding its breath. We took a single photo, just to prove we'd made it. But we didn't linger. We knew we were pushing our luck. We climbed back down and started creeping through the park, the way we had come, We were maybe 5 minutes from the fence when we had to freeze. A guard, patrolling in a golf cart, was coming our way. We ducked behind a snack shack, waiting for them to pass. And that's when the night turned into a nightmare. I noticed something move in the dark. First, I thought I imagined it. Maybe just a shadow from the golf cart's headlights. But then Charles tapped my arm and pointed. About 30 feet away, barely visible in the darkness, between two buildings, was another person. They were crouching down, just like we were, hiding from the guards. But this wasn't a kid, not even close. And the worst part, the part that made my skin crawl, I was almost certain they were looking directly at us. The guard finally passed, and the figure moved. He darted across an open patch of ground, passing through a small spill of light from a street lamp. For a split second, I saw him clearly. A man, shirtless, wearing tattered jeans. But what froze my blood was the dark liquid smeared across his face and chest. It looked like blood, fresh, dark, shiny in the weak light. Charles saw it too. The man didn't look at us again. He just vanished into the darkness, slipping deeper into the park. We didn't wait. We bolted for the fence, scrambled over it, and practically dove into our tent. We didn't sleep at all, just lay in our sleeping bags, hearts pounding, listening to every sound outside. The next morning, a camp staffer came by our tent with a serious announcement. Apparently, a man had been stabbed and killed the night before at a lake about 4 miles away. The suspect was still on the loose, described as a disheveled white male, shirtless, covered in blood. They told us to pack up and leave for our own safety. Charles and I looked at each other, pale as ghosts. We had been just feet away from a murderer. We never told the police, and that guilt still haunts me. This second story happened back in October of 2016. If you were online back then, you remember the clown hysteria. People were dressing up as creepy clowns, roaming neighborhoods, terrorizing people. Most were hoaxes, but some were dangerous. I was 16, a junior in high school, living in the city. I had just finished school and hopped on the 6 train, heading uptown. The train was mostly empty, and I wasn't paying attention. Headphones in, music blasting. I was reviewing chemistry flashcards on my phone. I was completely unaware of my surroundings. A mistake I'll never make again. When the train arrived at 96 State Street, I jumped up instinctively, barely looking up. The routine of getting off at my stop felt second nature. The doors slid open, but as I stepped out, my path was blocked. I looked up, expecting a rude commuter. Instead, standing directly in the doorway, blocking me from leaving, was a clown. He was wearing the full getup, oversized rainbow pants, a baggy yellow shirt with red suspenders, and giant red shoes. But his face, it was something else. Thick white grease paint, exaggerated blue eyebrows, and a red smile, smeared, angry, twisting his expression into something unnatural. He didn't say a word. He just stood there, not trying to get on the train, but clearly preventing me from getting off. I froze in shock. The doors were going to close in a few seconds. I tried to brush past him, mumbling, "Excuse me." But the moment I moved, he leaned down, bringing that painted face inches from mine. I didn't wait to see what he wanted. I ducked under his arm and sprinted onto the platform. That's when he lunged. I heard his heavy, oversized shoes slapping against the tiles, chasing me. I glanced back, and my heart stopped. He wasn't just chasing me to scare me. In his right hand, gripped tight, was a long kitchen knife. This wasn't a prank. This was real. The station was empty. Just me and this psycho. I ran up the stairs, faster than I've ever run in my life, bursting out onto the street, into the daylight. I called the police immediately, but by the time they checked the station, he was gone. This final story isn't about ghosts or monsters, but it's the one that scares me the most because it was so real. I was 24, fresh out of college, struggling to find work. I was scrolling through Indeed late one night when I found a listing for a private lifeguarding job at a hotel a few towns over. The details were strange. First, the hours were 5:00 p.m. to 1:00 a.m. Basically a night shift for a pool. Second, the pay was absurdly high, $30 an hour. But the weirdest part was the requirement: must not speak Spanish. Here's the thing. I'm half Mexican, and I've been fluent in Spanish since I was a kid. The town the hotel was in was predominantly Spanish-speaking. The requirement made no sense. But for that kind of money, I decided to lie. I went to the interview the next day. I was greeted by a friendly guy named Chief and a massive, intimidating man named Esteban. Esteban immediately started testing me. He walked right up and started speaking rapid Spanish, asking questions, commenting on the weather. He was staring straight into my eyes, looking for a reaction. I played dumb, staring blankly until he finally laughed and switched to English. "You're hired," he said. The job was simple but shady. I sat by the pool, watched the water, collected entry fees from non-guests. But there was a specific rule. If anyone showed me a blue wristband, I was to unlock the pool house, a large building behind my lifeguard stand, and let them in without questions. I wasn't allowed inside. Over the weeks, I watched men arrive, show the band, enter the house, and an hour later, they'd leave with backpacks that looked significantly fuller than when they arrived. I knew what was happening. Money laundering, drugs, maybe worse. The tips they gave me were insane. Hundreds of dollars just for opening a gate. I started to get comfortable, and that was my mistake. Because I didn't speak Spanish, the men began talking freely around me. I heard conversations about shipments, about cleaning money, and even about people they had to take care of. I kept my mouth shut, terrified that if I reacted, they'd know. I understood every single word. One night, I saved Jeef's son from drowning in the deep end. They treated me like a hero. The next evening, Esteban and the crew threw a small party by the pool. For me, they handed me a glass of wine, and Esteban made a toast in Spanish. He laughed, bragging about how much money they had washed that month and how they had fooled the police. He was confessing to crimes right in front of me, thinking I was just a dumb gringo. I had to smile and clap, sweating bullets, pretending I didn't know. I was drinking with murderers. The end came the next day. My mom called me while I was on duty. It was an emergency, so I stepped into a quiet alcove to answer. Without thinking, I switched to Spanish to comfort her. Si mama entiendo, no te preocupes. I spoke for maybe 30 seconds. When I hung up and turned to go back to the pool, my heart stopped. Esteban was standing right there in the hallway. He wasn't smiling. He stared at me with cold, dead eyes. "I thought you didn't speak Spanish," he said quietly. I stammered, lying that I was just learning a few words, but he didn't buy it. He looked at me for what felt like an eternity, calculating. Finally, he just said, "Okay," and walked away. He told me to come in early the next day for a special opportunity. I knew that was code for a one-way trip. I finished my shift, got in my car, and never went back. I moved apartments. A month later, I survived because I quit before they could fire me permanently.